Welcome everyone to our Global Innovation Readiness webinar series with our theme, Innovating for a Better World. We look forward to bringing you the topic of global innovation strategies for 2021 and beyond. And I'm Karina Jensen, a founder and executive director of Global Minds Network. I'm here with my colleague, Brian Samkuli, our global innovation and marketing leader at Global Minds Network, who brings extensive experience in leading global innovation initiatives at InBev and Kimberly-Clark and numerous clients. So we look forward to sharing with you our global survey, as well as insights and thoughts about global innovation for this year and beyond. So welcome and wishing everyone a very happy new year, a happy and healthy new year. We look forward to making this a positive year for innovation and collaboration, looking at what kinds of great solutions we can create around the world. And for that readiness journey that we're about to embark with you, just 5 tips. Make sure everybody knows Zoom by now, so you know your webinar tool, but keep in mind this is a Zoom webinar, so that it has the Q&A feature and chat as well. So for any questions, please type them into the Q&A feature for our exchange session a little bit later in the hour. And we'll keep you on mute. I think your microphones will be muted throughout, but you can open them up for the exchange session and decide whether you want to text a question or go in video mode. Just to test the audio and text, please say hello, share your innovation wish for 2021. We all need some good wishes out there, so maybe just to test and make sure all is good. Type a message, say hello, let's share your wish. Make sure you're out there. Do we see everybody? Hey, there's some of you out there. Excellent. Okay, good. You can hear me, and I know there's some familiar faces in the audience too. I'm sorry, with the Zoom webinar, we can't always see you, but it's good to hear you. Oh, I like that wish from Antonio. Vaccines for everybody. Okay, we have one wish. I'm sure we have more wishes out there. We'll hear from you. The new normal way of working will give us better innovation. Yes, global reach. I like that from Brigitte. Excellent. Okay, we'll keep those wishes coming. And we're gonna share our thoughts with you here for the innovation readiness journey. For Global Innovation Readiness, this series, we brought them, first introduced them last year in 2020 for the sole purpose of looking at how could we explore with you better ways of collaborating and innovating, especially in this changing world. And so we had great feedback from our last series, and we thought, well, we need to bring back season 2 for this year, and with the theme of innovating for a better world. So how can we now move forward and look at ways to empower leaders and teams and look at solutions and ways of doing so. And so we'll kick this session off this evening with day for you, Global Innovation Strategies for 2021 and beyond. But as you see, we'll bring this back every last Thursday of the month through June 24th. And we'll explore topics such as strategic co-creation for local markets, sustainable development goals. We'll look at inclusive leadership, mastering team collaboration, and finally driving global readiness, moving from concept to market, and how to master marketing and sales readiness. So we hope you'll join us on this journey, and look forward to seeing you at future sessions as well. And a bit about us, Global Minds Network. Our purpose, what we're all about, is an international advisory firm who enables leaders and teams to collaborate and innovate for global and local impact. And we do so through an international advisory team, a group of leaders, innovators, change makers who we all share this vision of facilitating multicultural collaboration and global innovation performance. So we're a diverse team of leaders who bring extensive international experience, however, very diverse backgrounds. So we serve as a global mind trust and bring our expertise at the intersection of global innovation, leadership, multicultural collaboration, and digital transformation. So time to take a look at innovation for 2021 and beyond. What are the innovation strategies, especially in a world that we see is really global, interdependent, multicultural, it's digitally connected. And so we need to think about this context as we're leading innovation, and how will we effectively collaborate in order to develop solutions that are truly valuable to customers and markets around the world. And so we're going to share with you a Global Innovation Readiness Survey that we conducted at the end of 2020, and we're still keep open. It's still open until February. And so what we'll be sharing with you in this session are the results from our first phase research, which was with 124 innovation leaders. So what we deemed experts. They're responsible for leading initiatives and teams across cultures and geography. The leaders who are living the context that was just described in our current context. And as you see, high-level leaders, C-level, executive vice president, director, head, senior managers, mostly based in North America, Europe, and Asia, who have mostly responsibilities that are global, international, regional, and work for organizations, largely multinational firms, but they're also SMEs, startups, nonprofits, as well as NGOs across sectors. So quite diverse. And what was interesting to see is their thoughts around what is important in today's world, what is important for innovation or leading innovation. I'd like to add that we are now up to over 220 participants. So we have opened the survey up to other leaders across sectors. And so we will have a follow-up on the survey as well as on the study, which involves interviews. So there's more to come. Stay tuned. So we asked our experts, the survey participants, what is global innovation readiness about? How do we define this? And largest number agreed that it's about competencies and capabilities that meet collaboration and innovation needs for this multicultural and digitally connected world. But there were many who also felt that we need to consider leadership and team performance in terms of supporting and achieving business objectives, as well as effective planning and execution. So there is much to consider, especially in this complex world. And what is important, or what is interesting for us, is to look at where innovation belongs today. And we wanted to share that with you because there's a great shift. And as you see, there's a big shift to employees as well as those responsible for strategic or global initiatives. So organizations are casting the net wide and looking at how to empower employees across the organization, across functions and cultures, but also placing emphasis on how to lead initiatives from concept to market. That is also followed by traditional groups, a big emphasis on R&D, new product development, as well as focus for some organizations, a very special focus on dedicated innovation groups. So some had a dedicated innovation group for global, with a global reach. Some focus more on initiatives such as hubs and centers, as well as entrepreneurship programs. And yet others had more of a dedicated innovation group that would lead or champion innovation throughout the company. Another question that we'd like to look at that sets the foundation for our global success factors was organizational innovation needs. And so here leaders were asked, what are the priorities for this coming year, 2021? And we see the common themes were really about human-centric innovation for what we see as an increasingly project and team-driven era. And as you see, the largest priorities were around team and project collaboration, followed by strategic alignment, as leadership development. So really the human aspects of innovation, how to develop leaders who can facilitate collaboration innovation, as well as how to empower a team and project driven process and ensure it's aligned across the organization. That being said, you'll see that there was also emphasis on digital access. We can't do this without being powered by technologies. An emphasis on developing a culture, a global innovation culture, as well as a dedicated process, and then supporting that through online training. So if we look at this context, what we'd like to do is share, Brian and I will share with you what we found, the big takeaways, the 6 success factors or innovation drivers for this year and beyond. And it starts with number 1, developing leaders as innovation facilitators. If we look at the survey, one question was around leadership mindset. What will it take to succeed in a changing global economy? And leaders had 5 responses. Is it really about one mindset, a creative mindset or digital mindset, or is it about a holistic mindset that integrates these 4 critical perspectives? And as you see, the majority the leaders felt that it's really about a holistic mindset, a leader that could integrate both creative, multicultural, sustainable, and digital, which means these are leaders that can have a mindset where they're open to innovating through ideas and knowledge across cultures, across functions, across geographies. With teams as well as customers in this digitally connected network and ecosystems. But that they can also do so with a mind or attention to innovating across commercial, societal, and environmental outcomes that are powered by digital platforms and tools. And that we see at Global Alliance Network, we compared that with a global study from 5 years ago, and that was also tested during this global survey. That holistic mindset is also powered by behaviors. What are the leadership behaviors that are necessary for innovation leaders to ensure a project success? And there we see the role of the leader as becoming more and more a knowledge facilitator. So a leader that can connect the global network and facilitate knowledge for teams across the organization. And that it means that leaders will more and more need to develop the behaviors that would facilitate the cycle of innovations throughout that innovation process and journey. So if we look at those key phases in terms of ideation and creation, initial phase, leaders need to bring more empowering behaviors to look at how they can inspire new ideas, encourage more initiative taking, risk taking in this early stage or front end stage of innovation, which then leads to strategic planning and co-creation, where leaders need to bring more inclusive behaviors to integrate knowledge from diverse teams in the organization and ensure that that is reflected of their knowledge as well as the local markets and customers. Which brings us to validation, how to build a solid business case and ensure a concept truly represents or speaks to local market and customer needs. And that requires responsive behaviors from innovation leaders to be responsive, to pay attention to what is needed in those local markets for internationalization as well as localization requirements. And finally, that brings us to execution, where leaders are finding more and more they need communicative behaviors, how to stay close to the ground in communication with teams around the world, pay attention to changes in the market and customer needs, and ensure that's reflected within the execution process for marketing and sales readiness. And that finally brings us to global team performance and hopefully a successful journey, which really helps the leader elevate teams and for everyone to enjoy project success.
So the second key driver that we identified was this need to focus on both human-centric and customer-centric innovation. The results show that for an effective approach to innovation success, that what had bubbled up to the top is really a focus on being very customer-centric and human-centric within your organization to drive innovation success, and those being the two aspects being most critical to ensuring that success. Other key components that bubbled up were having a good business model and ensuring that you're focusing on that business model from the beginning, enabling that innovation success through digital tools, market success, which to some degree can complement the customer-centric focus as well, and then interestingly enough, product-centric. So you can see that it's not just about necessarily designing a new product or new solution, but it's all those other aspects of the market and sort of the human component that leaders are seen as much more important to driving innovation success. If we look at some of the key insights that we obtained on the strategic co-creation component, strong sense that there is more need to drive local input into the global sort of platforms and strategies. And important to driving that from a leadership perspective is to build trust and ensure that you're getting creativity out of your local markets and entire teams, especially during the front end phase of the innovation cycle. I think one of the key insights we identified here is the need for greater involvement of the local teams, particularly in the planning stage of the innovation funnel and pipeline process, and getting that input and alignment with the local teams much earlier in the process has been very helpful to drive success, in addition to bringing forward a strong go-to-market process and ensuring that you're going through the right preparation before bringing your product or service to market. So here's just a schematic of how to bring your local teams and roles together to drive greater global value creation. And I think I had the opportunity of experiencing a good example of this in my days at InBev, where we had identified a very successful product line extension that the Beck's brand had in Germany with a Radler product, which is beer and lemonade. And we did some research into that opportunity and found that that was a need that was not being fulfilled in a number of other markets in terms of having a different kind of refreshment beverage that delivered on some of the local needs that weren't being addressed. And so we ended up actually taking that concept from the German market and within 18 months launched it into 10 other countries under various brands and various propositions. But we were able to drive effectively a global proposition out of that from a local insight and a local market success.
Okay, now 3, facilitate collaboration for team and project-driven generation. So we're hearing more and more, it's all about collaboration in order to achieve innovation. And what we find is still true, though, is that there are challenges that remain. And this was through the global survey, we found that the same challenges remained as 5 years ago, actually, but these were with tech-driven industries. But team leaders still found there are challenges with trust building, especially team engagement when you're driving a project across or driving innovation across cultures, conflict management, knowledge sharing, and risk taking. What were particularly challenging were trust building. To be able to build that connection and that openness for team members in order for them to share knowledge and in order for them to feel safe to take risk and take initiative, as well as team engagement, that leaders could ensure that teams are fully engaged throughout the innovation process, and knowledge sharing, how to encourage knowledge sharing, ensure that there was transparency and an ability to share knowledge that was important for the innovation project. And this has great impact on achieving global performance. And this continues to be a challenge because for those, we saw those organizations who were not able to facilitate collaboration effectively, they saw failures or negative impact on the concept design that didn't truly meet the local market needs or customer preferences. Could impact strategic planning where knowledge wasn't fully represented from around the world. Marketing, messaging, and as we've all seen, we know all the stories of getting lost in translation in terms of marketing campaigns and not paying attention to local norms. And operational efficiency can also be affected. How is this reflected in the value chain in delivering a new solution, as well as, of course, customer connection and global sales performance? So it's truly important to look at how to engage in all local teams. And what we found through the global survey is that there's still not certainty in terms of how engaged they are throughout the innovation process. And as you see, a majority are engaged in the go-to-market phase, execution, marketing, and sales readiness. Well, that is very important because that is where the organization needs a team to deliver locally, to market and sell those concepts, and to ensure growth and sales performance. However, as you see, the smallest number were involved in strategic planning, which is really critical for effective execution. If those teams aren't involved in strategic planning to reflect the knowledge and required or the type of concept that would best respond to local market and customer needs, then that will affect execution again. Again, it will be important for organizations to take a closer look at how engaged are my teams throughout this innovation process, and where is their knowledge and their talent, where are their voices heard, and where are they most important through that innovation process. And that also will impact trust. So as we saw, the greatest challenge around trust building will need to be addressed through a constant focus on relationship building. So we saw these were the top practices by leaders in terms of developing trust for their teams and looking at relationship building across functions, across cultures, how to make those connections through the global network, the digital network, how to build trust even though we live in this digital world. And then do that to find ways to listen and respond to team members, how to create those moments through team meetings, through one-on-ones, through informal virtual cafes, to truly be able to listen to team needs as well as respond to them and ensure that they have the resources and the support they need to be effective in their markets. And throughout the innovation process. So again, it's about open and consistent communication from team leaders and between teams, and how that is designed through the project collaboration process.
So the fourth key driver that we identified is the importance of harnessing the collective intelligence that you have within your global network of innovators and team members. What we were able to identify was that some of the most effective tools for project collaboration are in fact the utilization of a video platform. And we'll see this in the next chart, which is interesting through the work that we have done through the survey, and of course what we've been doing through our COVID experience over the last year or so, that utilizing video platforms such as Zoom and others has obviously bubbled very highly up to the front, and that's been reflected in the survey results. And I think we're seeing how an effective tool it is becoming in helping teams be connected and collaborating more effectively. Also, having a project platform is seen as being very important to driving that collaboration. and still either on-site or in-person communication. I think that's why we're seeing the video platform as a means to ensure that we're being able to do as much in-person collaboration as possible to continue to drive the innovation process forward. And important tools, I think, in those video and face-to-face instances is those are tools that really help us build trust and help us build relationships with people that we may be physically distant from, and importantly helps us keep open and consistent communication throughout the development of the innovation project. From a communication and learning perspective, we've seen that online collaboration tools and virtual collaboration platforms are very, very important resources that global teams are utilizing out there to help stay connected and to be much more coordinated and effective in their innovation development projects. I think, interestingly enough, we've seen a number of teams and organizations continuing to experiment and explore different tools and different resources to use. But my sense on this would be that I don't think anyone's really sort of found the right balance or the perfect formula for what those resources are to drive things most effectively. And I think that really comes forward for me in the fact that only 2 of these resources actually reached over 50% of our respondents. So there's still, I think, a lot of experimentation going on and people trying to find out what are the right resources or combination of resources to use to apply to global innovation projects. Importantly as well is the need for consistent knowledge sharing and learning, and how do you transfer learning across your organization and your teams. And I think as you look at social networking as a component to engaging your teams and people involved in the organization, how do you continue to practice knowledge sharing across that team and ensure that people understand where the project is, why you're moving forward with it at whatever stage you are, the benefits it's going to bring to the organization and to the marketplace, and ultimately how do you develop cross-cultural learning that feeds on different teams so that they understand the needs of various markets across your organization. I think key to this, as Karina identified earlier, is the need for leadership and for leaders to evolve their skill set to ensure that they are acting as a knowledge facilitator and putting effective platforms in place, ensuring that the teams are interacting effectively and they've got the right tools to do so in an effective and expeditious manner, and conducting things like live forums or communities within their groups and teams, and having spontaneous sharing sessions are very, very important to helping your team and the organization move much more quickly through the innovation process.
Okay, then we are at number 5, how to inspire global innovation culture. What we found through the global survey is that innovation culture is number 1. We've asked innovation leaders to rank what is most important to ensuring a successful global innovation throughout the organization. And it's all about innovation culture, as we see. Majority responded that, but it was closely followed by team leadership and communication, as well as collaboration, project methodology then followed, and technology, platform, and tools. And these are all interdependent. They really help shape that innovation culture. It leads with innovation culture, but it takes a leader as well as a team, and of course, communication, collaboration processes. And what is interesting here is also to look at the values that would shape that global innovation culture. So we asked in the survey, we asked these leaders, which values are demonstrated by your organization? And though the 2 that were of the strongest agreement, were most felt that this was most important or most demonstrated by their organization, as you see, was about respecting and understanding cultural differences, as well as allowing innovative thinking and new ideas. And then you see there were others that responded in terms of encouraging initiative and risk-taking. This was a less agreement, so this was variable, where we see that there may have been agreement as well as less agreement. Encouraging knowledge sharing exchange, also more variable from organizations, whether they see this or felt it existed in their organization. And then as you see throughout, we have ensuring global and local responsiveness, facilitating communication, and optimizing culturally diverse perspectives, which again showed more variables. But these were values that were embraced by a large number of the participants. We find from our global studies this past 5 years as shaped by a global innovation culture and its values. So we have found that cultural empathy, creativity, collaboration are a foundation, are essential values that are represented within a global innovation culture. And cultural empathy, meaning that how an organization, and that we saw that on previous slide too, in terms of values, being able to respect and understand cultural differences, how an organization displays that by focusing on teams, teamwork with culturally diverse employees that represent different regions, that truly represent their markets and their customers. The creativity, the value of creativity, we saw in organizations who placed a large emphasis, a big emphasis on ideation, innovative thinking, that employees had time for this, that there were processes and tools to develop new ideas and to voice them in their groups, the organization. And this also was displayed in the global survey. These were where a number of leaders noted it was the strength of their organization. So there's quite a strong confidence around organizations being able to think creatively, and this has progressed from 5 years ago. We in our global study from 5 years ago, there was less emphasis in this area. Now organizations are seeing it more as a strength. So it's exciting to see this aspect. And collaboration, the value of collaboration for an organization to ensure transparency and knowledge sharing, so that everyone feels they have access to that information, they can share knowledge, and they can learn from each other. And that in turn shapes a creative team climate that's more responsive, that's transparent, that displays an entrepreneurial spirit, and in that sense can ensure execution success.
So lastly, the key driver that we've identified is the need to master innovation execution to ensure ultimately for success of innovation in the marketplace. In looking at some of the readiness results from the survey, we definitely see needs for continuing holistic and human-centered solutions from concept to market. So if we move forward, we'll see from an organizational perspective, there were significant variations across training programs, new skills, variations around digital platforms, and from leaders and teams, we would have seen significant variations though across those platforms and tools, variations across the innovation framework and process, and open and partnership innovation process is not necessarily being in place effectively. I think the other key component here is really the importance of having executive and or business unit leaders really driving and enforcing sort of the importance of innovation readiness, and really help guide and lead the organization from their seats to ensure that organizations are getting aligned and moving forward most effectively. If we look at how people responded to managing global innovation projects and what were some of the strengths and weaknesses as it relates to those projects, as Karina mentioned a couple slides ago, there seems to be a lot of strength with self-evaluation around idea generation, creativity, those being significant areas of strength. But weaknesses were identified around knowledge sharing, learning, systematic project processes, and importantly, execution. So in this case, innovation execution and mastering it is, I think, a key driver. But right now, many organizations are saying that they're not executing with excellence, and that there is a significant opportunity to actually improve their executional capabilities and ultimately success.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our journey, and also to a framework that we've developed throughout our studies, and now have updated thanks to these the global survey results and these success indicators. So what we see as the future for global innovation readiness, and some solutions to think about that we would like to share with you. And as mentioned, we see this as a journey in this project and team-driven environment, and that organizations, leaders and teams need to think more closely about both the collaboration as well as the innovation process ahead, and that how closely they're related and how important they are to ensure a successful innovation across the organization. And it starts with the foundation. So as we see, and what we've learned through working with clients as well as through these research results, is that the foundation is so important to ensure leadership and team development through these levers of vision, dialogue, and space. So as you saw from the survey results as well, the importance of developing a shared vision, a compelling global vision through inclusive leadership, as well as attention to strategic co-creation and how that is shaped through team engagement. And that in turn inspires dialogue. So how an organization can connect the global network through effective team collaboration and knowledge sharing process, where teams can not only share customer stories or events or their own ideas, but how they are learning, how organizational learning is taking place, not only within headquarters, but every location in the world. And that, again, helps shape a space or inspires a space where global innovation culture can thrive, and where the innovation process itself helps inspire a culture that is driven by a sense of creativity, a cultural empathy, ability to, an open mindset to collaborate and learn. And again, that shapes the creative team climate, which drives the innovation process. And so we come back to the innovation process that helps strengthen the innovation process, as you see, and helps leaders and teams truly drive a very engaging and responsive innovation project through the cycle from concept to market. And that's where leaders can pay more attention to every phase from creation, ideation, and think about what's important for a systematic ideation process through planning, strategic co-creation, to really think closely about the assessment and how to engage in terms of strategic co-creation, but understanding what's important for innovation impact, and then through validation to look at where what is important for that concept, and how will it be validated with local teams and customers and markets, as well as the value proposition, building the business case that speaks to multiple markets and customers. And that brings us to go to market, to look at, well, then ensure that you have an effective innovation project process that is aligned with the organization and market and customer needs, but that you're also paying attention to local market and sales readiness. And what is needed for those customers. And finally, that brings us to performance, to pay attention from concept to market, that the organization, that you, the leader, the team is ready. So do you have a global readiness assessment, a way to assess organizational readiness as well as readiness for leaders and teams, to ensure you're ready to collaborate and innovate for 2021 and beyond? So we'll open up to questions at this point. Go to Q&A to get your feedback, thoughts, questions. We welcome your perspectives as well. we'll take a look at the Q&A. Okay, so we have a question here from Nitin. Would you say that to create thriving innovation ecosystems, organizations and individuals will have to invest in building strong foundations and soft skills? Yes, I would, with a big yes. I think this is so important. We've seen this through the global survey, through feedback from participants, but also through client work, how important it is to empower the local teams, ensure that they have, embrace a way to initiate. How can they initiate? How can they share their ideas? Is there a process or business case process that can be embraced by the whole organization, where everyone feels empowered and inspired to initiate these ideas or implement initiatives. So it definitely starts at the local and regional level.
Yeah, and I would build on your response, Karina, by saying I think very importantly, sort of maybe hidden in that question is the importance of internal stakeholder management and ensuring that the leadership teams are actively involved, understand what is going on, at what stage of the process you are in your work, so that they actually become advocates for you internally as well as potentially becoming adversaries. So I think internal stakeholder management is a really important component to that as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brian. We got another question from JP Curry. What definition of innovation do you use? Well, we shared with you our definition of global innovation readiness. So we look at it more as an integrated process. So looking at, how we look at the human side. More and more in this project team-driven environment, it's really about the human innovation process. So we'll go back to that definition, or at least I'll point you back to that definition in terms of how to develop competencies and capabilities, leadership and team competencies, but organizational capabilities, where you can ensure successful projects, success to collaborate and innovate. And again, we emphasize the context. I think this is something that is missed by a lot of organizations today. We tend to speak in universal concepts, but we need to look at the context, which is international, it's multicultural, it's digitally connected. And anything to add to that, Brian?
No, I think from that context, it's very important. Not sure if JP, you're thinking on a more, in a sense, literal basis, but for me, I would look at innovation as anything that is an improvement to an existing thing, product, or service. So anything that's an improvement, frankly, to me is a form of innovation, and it can take place as a thing, a process, a relationship, etc. So I would just sort of, to build on Karina's point, say any kind of improvement, with us having presented today, focus on a lot of the human and soft skill components that are required to drive that.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. It starts with that. Antonio has a question, Antonio Urquiza. The pandemic likely was in everybody's mind when responding to the survey. So in addition to the dramatic increase of online collaboration tools, where did you find the key shifts in practices or behaviors comparing to the survey you did for your book 5 years ago? Good question, Antonio. Yes. Where I saw the primary shifts, as mentioned, was the shift around 5 years ago. There was less confidence in the ability to ideate and to develop creative things in the organization. Most saw this as a weakness. So there was a lot of investment in the last 5 years to develop programs, to develop these competencies, to ideate, to develop ideas. Where I see, but there were also more strengths in execution 5 years ago. There was a lot more confidence around being able to execute. Whereas I see the shift has changed now. So now be it the pandemic or during the period we find ourselves in right now, it's shifted. So there's a lot more confidence ideas. Organizations feel, well, we can develop the ideas. We have programs to do that. We have plenty of ideas. But now there's less confidence in execution. How are we going to execute on that, especially in this changing environment? So that's a major shift that I see. And one I will share with you that I think everybody needs to pay attention to, which has been a weakness for the last 5 years during these studies. It's knowledge sharing and learning. Organizations are still not mastering that ability to look at how can they fully share critical knowledge for innovation and learn from that. And I think that will be really essential for the future of successful innovation. More questions? Do I have any other thoughts or comments? I didn't check the chat box, but any other thoughts or questions out there?
Antonio just wrote in another question on co-creation development. To what extent respondents manifested the willingness to go beyond the boundaries of the organization by using open innovation? I think we're seeing that more and more organizations are becoming more open to that in a broader context, but some are just not sure how to go about it effectively. And I think that's where people are looking for help, is really how to go about it. I know that was a key area for me in my Kimberly-Clark days, and one of the things that we really embarked on was a concept of moving from open innovation to really partnership innovation, and really finding those parallel industries or parallel companies that made complementary products or solutions to what you were producing and servicing the market with, and really working with them much more closely to find almost joint solutions as a means to drive that more effectively than sort of creating projects or contests out there to find new solutions.
Yeah, and John brought up an interesting question too, in terms of how do you balance customer centricity with human centricity? How to bring it together? How to bring that balance of local to global, right? Brian, I'll toss that question to you.
Yeah, I think that is a constant yin and yang sort of question in terms of getting local insights and local not only participation but advocacy around projects, but at the same time, how do you effectively make that a global initiative that can be executed in multiple markets, obviously effectively, with some efficiencies and greater scale to the benefit of the organization, while at the same time ensuring local success and local relevance. So I think important to that is the project team really needs to understand what are some of the hard and soft points of that initiative, and what are the things that can't change for potentially operational issues and manufacturing issues, but what are the things that have flexibility and can change, can a scent change, can the packaging color change, what are those things that have the ability to be much more locally relevant to ensure success in those local markets, while at the same time really continue to be part of a global initiative that has a number of opportunities and components to it that can drive success on a multi-regional global basis.
John's got a follow-up question around leadership and looking at skills or qualities of leaders. What do you personally believe should be the one key, good question, John, thanks again, one key thing leaders need to do better? And this, I think my personal, from what I found through research as well as work with clients, it is around that role of knowledge facilitator for leaders to let go a bit, and in terms of empowering their teams and to bring that knowledge, their talent, and to the process. So yes, leaders are the project visionaries, and they can help set that vision and inspire and guide teams. However, it's so important for those leaders to become knowledge facilitators and help uh, make it more inclusive, ensure that those teams are empowered and enabled in order to ensure project success or innovation success. So I bring that back to the role of the knowledge facilitator.
Got a couple more questions in the
Yeah.
Q&A, Karina.
Do we? Oh, I
Yes,
missed that.
we do.
Are you seeing some there? I better put my glasses on. Let's see. Did I
Yeah,
miss some?
no, I'll respond to another one that JP Corey
Oh,
sent
wow,
in.
we got quite a few. Okay.
What is innovation in your view, specifically product or services, or is it wider, and what innovation success criteria do you apply? So in my perspective, I would subscribe to a concept called Big I innovation, where innovation goes well beyond just a new product or a new service to include, manufacturing process, go-to-market strategies, channel strategies. I would say there are so many different dimensions around a potential business model that any of those areas, in fact, can benefit and receive innovation or drive an innovation component. And I think what you've seen with a lot of very powerful, call it new products in the marketplace, is that they have actually innovated across multiple dimensions when they've come to market with a new product that maybe sits inside a total ecosystem, and it goes through a different channel than products like that potentially got sold previously. So I think when you multiply innovation across a number of dimensions, you in fact get a much more impactful innovation. And so I think looking at innovation across all those dimensions is super important.
Ooh, and we have a question from see, I have an anonymous question here. How should leaders of today most influence management on investing in innovation consistently for long-term growth and a greater purpose? Any insights from the study? Okay, wow. So more about how to influence management. I would go back to the tandem of not only being a knowledge facilitator, but an innovation orchestrator. So how leaders can help influence those behaviors for the teams throughout that innovation cycle, because more and more we see how important that is to engage teams and to connect them, but that also that they recognize how to orchestrate that innovation process. What is most effective for your context and to be able to ensure international market success. So think about those tandems of not only the collaboration process, the behaviors that it takes to be effective collaborators and knowledge facilitators, but also an innovation orchestrator, how you integrate that into your innovation process. I hope that answered your question from our anonymous participant. Nitin has another question on, according to you, what should innovation leadership programs cover to be effective in the context of a post-pandemic world? We're working on that with some clients right now in developing leadership programs, development programs, and we're finding that there are more and more demands for how to collaborate and innovate. So how to create leaders who understand the importance of innovation in terms of what is important for that process of developing innovation, inspiring the organization, and ensuring that the support systems or resources are in place for their teams, but also how that is done through collaboration. And so that it brings us back to the leadership program. We feel it's really about leading, facilitating, and orchestrating. How can leaders and teams do that to not only inspire, but implement innovation in their organizations? So it's from inspiration to implementation. And I think the next question is for you, Brian, from JP Corey.
So many co-creation tools to support the innovation process. Which attributes seem to deliver the most effective collaboration? Again, I think this is again sort of a people solution more so than it is a tool solution, and it really is around leadership and providing the right environment for individuals to collaborate. and really build their soft skills and understand the value of inclusion, diversity of thinking, etc. I think if you get that foundation right, the tools just really become an enabler to drive sort of the innovation project, but you really need sort of the foundation of those human components to really make them work most effectively.
Yeah, and you have the tools involved in design thinking, and we also have the systematic ideation process that our design and innovation leaders working on at Global Minds Network, Lokesh Venkataswamy. So there are different tools that you can consider that help engage the teams through that co-creation process. And design thinking is at the foundation of that, but there are other ways to integrate that to make sure it's an ideation process that speaks to everybody, but especially when you're working with international teams. Antonio, so final question on the learning sharing topic. I tend to believe that companies do not typically award or reward collaboration. To what extent HR-driven performance management models end up stifling innovation? It's an interesting question. I'm finding that this may be true of the past, but through our survey, we're finding that leaders and organizations are paying more attention. I think they're starting to realize, especially through this pandemic period, how important collaboration really is, in that we need to connect with our colleagues, not only on a personal level and to develop those relationships, but also to collaborate more effectively. So I believe this will change. We're already seeing changes there where HR and leadership training development groups are reaching out and looking for more solutions. How can we train for better collaborators? How can we develop better skills?
Yeah. And I think from almost a tactical perspective, Antonio, on this question, I would suggest that some of our performance and evaluation systems actually don't help facilitate collaboration. So how do you get into shared objectives and shared targets across those teams that should be collaborating, and then build that into their reward and performance systems? I mean, some things you should just double count things, give credit to both teams, but I think a lot of performance systems are set up to, assign a value of certain success to one team, but not necessarily another. And so I think opportunities to have those shared targets, shared objectives that actually sort of force and drive collaboration, because there is a personal or financial benefit to doing so, and get those embedded into the evaluation systems help as well.
Okay, I think that concludes our Q&A session. Before we go, we'd like to share with you, I'd like to thank everyone for staying with us throughout this journey, or for our first session, helping us launch our first session of the Global Innovation Readiness webinar series, and Innovating for a Better World. We'd also like to invite you to continue the journey with us for upcoming sessions. You have our contact information there. If you have more questions, so you have our website too, where you can find more information about our webinar series, our services, our publications, and our events. And we would like to share with you for our next webinar on Thursday, February 25th, our next stop. We are delighted to present or announce that International Innovation Executive, Nicolas Brie, will be our guest speaker. Innovation booster for Orange, in French, in Africa. So really heading that activity of Innovation Booster program across Africa, and we'll be able to share many insights with you. And we will also include a panel of speakers who will join him with our own international design and innovation leader, Lokesh Venkataswamy, who brings insights from his work with his innovation from InnoMantra in India and in Asia. And then we have user design expert Marine Leroux-Thibault, who will bring insights from her work as project and design lead at US Digital Response, as well as her very rich experience working with companies on a digital and a design solutions. So they're going to share their insights on strategic co-creation for local markets on February 25th. So we hope you'll join us. You've got the link there, and for the webinar series. And please feel free to contact us for any questions or requests. We look forward to hearing from you. So wishing you a wonderful journey. Bon voyage.
Yes, all the best.
Thank you, everyone.